Durham has barely made a dent in his time, convicted unjustly, he says, of a horrible crime. An 11-year-old girl, dressed for a pool party, waited in her home, nestled here among the lawns and shade trees of Maple Ridge, an affluent section of Tulsa, Oklahoma. It was late morning. Her parents were both at work when a stranger forced his way into the house and raped the young girl. She provided police with a clear description: a small man, 5'5", with red hair, who was clean-shaven. And the police had a picture in their file that was a perfect match. It was Tim Durham. Durham had been in trouble before. His convictions included driving under the influence, public drunkenness, burglary for stealing a vacuum cleaner, fraud for charging $70 on a friend's father's credit card without permission, and then he sold a gun at a pawn shop, a probation violation. Rather than serve a prison sentence, Durham jumped bail. 10 weeks after the assault, the child victim chose Tim Durham's photo from a group of police mugshots. Durham, she said, had raped her.
You were accused of having raped an 11-year-old little girl. Did you commit that crime?
No, I did not. There's no way I could have.
The victim was a very impressive person.
That's the way James Gill, the jury foreman, remembers the power of the 11-year-old's testimony.
She seemed to have her act together, and she was a very credible witness.
And she said it was Tim Durham, no doubt about it.
She was absolutely and totally positive. And the reason why I believed her is because she spent so much time with him.
And it wasn't just the word of a child. The jury was also presented with science that incriminated Tim Durham.
Do you remember the scientific testimony, the DNA testimony?
Yes, it's again a long time ago, but I do remember something about it, yes.
What the jury foreman says he remembers is that sperm collected from the crotch of the victim's bathing suit contained DNA, and that the expert said Durham was within 5% of the population with that kind of DNA. To the jurors, both the victim and the scientist seemed to point directly at Durham.
The jury deliberated for how many hours about?
9 hours, I believe it was. We thought the man was guilty. We all voted that he was guilty.
If he had done this deal, I would be the first, I mean the first, to say he did it. My son did not do this. He was in Dallas, Texas.
He was seen by all these witnesses that very morning. We're not talking about the next day they talked to him. We're talking about that morning.
And if you think this is just his parents, Eleanor and Jim, making up an alibi for him, think again. All these people say they saw Tim Durham in Dallas, some at the exact time, 11 a.m., that the rape occurred in Tulsa, 239 miles away.
Almost 9 o'clock, probably a couple minutes before. They drove up. Tim was driving.
He drove up with his father.
Timmy had on some loud clothes. The shoes rung a bell in my mind.
He was definitely in my house around 11 o'clock.
If you're all telling the truth, there's no way that Tim Durham could have committed this crime.
He couldn't have done it, right?
That's the whole point.
And all of you testified.
Yes.
All of you testified.
All of us.
I feel very sorry for that girl, but she's got the wrong man. And that happens more often than not with an eyewitness identification.
In fact, DNA science has shown that nearly 1 out of every 4 victim identifications in rape cases are wrong. But Tim Durham's case is different. Part of the evidence against him was a DNA test, but he still believes it is DNA that can set him free.
We're mad, and justifiably so. And we're really mad now that we've got DNA evidence in the state's hands, and they won't act on it.
That's right. Jim and Eleanor Durham have now done what their son's lawyer did not do. They hired a DNA expert. One of the most respected DNA scientists in the country tested the semen stain left by the rapist, this time using a more sophisticated technique not available when Durham went to trial.
He was able to show that that semen stain could not have come from the defendant in this case, which was Tim Durham.
I believe, based on this particular test, that the wrong man was accused and the wrong man was tried and the wrong man was convicted.
You might think that's the end of it. Good science prevails and Tim Durham gets to go home. But it's apparently not that simple for the prosecutor's office that sent Tim Durham to prison in the first place. Does the DNA test result persuade you that the wrong man was convicted for this crime?
Not completely at this time. Otherwise, we would have joined in a joint application.
Bill LaFortune wasn't the Tulsa DA when Tim Durham was sent to prison, and he's not inclined to be the one who lets him out.
When the victim's family feels very strongly that despite the scientific evidence, they are still positive that it is Tim Durham who committed this crime, I have to take that in to consideration in my decision.
Why would you just sit neutrally by with your hands folded? I don't
So I
understand.
didn't have enough information, and still don't at this time, to be comfortable with that kind of a decision based on what I have. That is my position, and that's not going to change as a result of this interview today.
So Tim Durham is going to have to wait in his 4 by 6 foot cell until a judge agrees to hear the new DNA evidence.